Less than an hour ago, another South Carolina death row inmate chose to die by firing squad. He was the second to do so in less than 2 months. This comes as more states struggle to obtain the more common lethal injection drugs, and the Trump administration moves to restart federal death row executions. For tonight's interview, we're joined by Maher, executive director of the nonprofit Death Penalty Information Center. Robin, thank you for joining us. As a way to start, the Trump administration argues that the death penalty deters crime. What does the scholarship say on that question?
Well, good evening, John. You know, the death penalty has always been talked about in terms of deterrence, but the research really doesn't back it up. There's really no empirical evidence that confirms that there is a specific or a heightened deterrent effect when you use the death penalty as compared to other punishments. I think the best thing we can say about deterrence, frankly, is that it just can't be proven.
In South Carolina, we have these two executions by firing squad. Alabama and Louisiana have been using nitrogen gas for executions. Why are these states turning to these methods?
Well, some states, as you say, have turned to old methods of execution, like the firing squad, and some have turned to new methods, like forcing prisoners to breathe pure nitrogen gas for an execution. And they tell us the reason for that is because they can't obtain lethal injection drugs for lethal injection executions. Part of the problem there is we don't know the full truth of that story because these states are very, very secretive about their processes, and they often don't disclose many of the details about their protocols even to the prisoners themselves. It's certainly true that some pharmaceutical companies have stopped supplying their drugs to prisons for use in execution because they object to having their product used in death penalty cases. But what we've also learned from some of the independent witnesses who've observed some of these new methods, we've seen prisoners experiencing severe signs of distress and pain. It looks like those are unconstitutional executions. We just can't be sure about it. But one thing that would help a lot is certainly more transparency from state officials.
How many exonerations have there been, Robin, in death penalty cases?
Well, there's been at least 200 people exonerated from death row. Those are people that were wrongfully convicted, sentenced to death, some of them very nearly executed. And those are only the ones that we know. We know that there are probably many people that were already executed, and we never discovered the truth of their wrongful conviction.
Is there a number for that group, essentially wrongful convictions where it was determined after it was too late?
No, we have a list on our death penalty information site. We run a website, and that information is there. We have a number of cases we've identified where advocates and lawyers have made very strong cases of credible innocence that the courts have not recognized.
The Justice Department, the Trump Justice Department, has decided they're going to seek the death penalty for Luigi Mangione. What do you make of that decision and how they made it?
Well, that decision raises a few questions. I mean, for one thing, the Department of Justice has a long-standing policy. It's a deliberate process for very thoughtfully deciding when they should seek a federal death sentence. But it's not at all clear that the department followed its own policies before it made this decision. One thing that jumps out at me is that they did not meet with defense counsel before making this decision, and that has ordinarily been true in every other decision the department has made. And that's because they can learn important information about the case and about the defendant that would inform that decision. The other factor that jumps out at me is that they did not wait even for a grand jury to return a federal indictment, which is very unusual. So all of these sort of factors raise more questions than they answer.
About 20 seconds left, Robin. What do you make of the Restore the Death Penalty executive order and how that might affect how the states do it?
Well, these are matters for the states and not the federal government to decide. I mean, each of the states is going to make its own decision about whether and how to use the death penalty. But at the end of the day, the juries are the ones that make these decisions, the American people. And what the data show us is that juries have been increasingly reluctant to sentence people to death in the last few years.